Let's take a look at this end here. Okay, that's what's going on there. And looks like a okay. So watch for that collar, that doesn't fall off somewhere. Okay. Well, I get to head in the garage now, so thank God. I'm at a good point here to share my progress, a couple thoughts I have, and I want to share a couple tips. Fortunately, it's just things that I thought about in advance that I know are going to help me out as I move along here. I know not everybody is going to be swapping cases or something that extreme, but even if you're, pulling things apart to fix a leak, or you're just working on your brake housing or anything, it doesn't matter. You still got to take things apart, put them back together. You still have surfaces to deal with gaskets, things like that. And you also have, junky bolts and cruddy threaded holes, all that kind of stuff. So for me, we've got my transmission I pulled here, which, it's the transmission and differentials, like one unit. And you can tell it's mine. It's the one that's busted out in the back. I got the new old one. And what I need to do, especially now that I'm in the nice warm garage, is swap all the guts out from this one into that one. And I also need all these studs, so I don't have to buy studs. But here's the thing. Okay, so before I move everything over into this, I wanted to get this cleaned up. So I had to deal with the gasket surfaces. And because I'm moving all the studs over, I've got all the threads. And then I'll tear into the gears. But I probably will move the gears over first. That way there's no studs in my way, and then I'll move the studs over. But here's what I'm doing and where I'm at with things. This transmission is turned upside down because I was currently working on cleaning out these threaded holes here with the tap. And I also bought a properly fitting die here to clean the threads off on all the studs. That's these. These are all the studs for the brake housing and the axle. And I thought I should point out to you, you should do the same. It's an old tractor. I know your stuff is getting cruddy and dirty. People have pulled bolts, put them back in. Who knows what kind of crud is getting in the holes. Plus you have corrosion, all that sort of stuff. So if you want things to be going together more easily, then clean all the threads. If you want it to be easier and last longer and be less likely to corrode and get stuck in the future, say 3, 4, 5 years from now, clean all that stuff. So what you'll need is, for cleaning off these threads of all these studs sticking out here, you'll need a size M12 with a 1.25 pitch threaded die here. And some of the studs were decent enough. I could, cut in by hand and take it off, no problem. Some of them, like maybe this one, there was so much, you can sort of see how dark it is. This one was really quite cruddy. Almost the whole thing was cruddy, whereas some of these are very clean. And I would just get it started and then get a socket and ratchet on here and do it the rest of the way. But my goal was that even if I had to use the ratchet, I wanted to get it to the point where I could do it by hand. No problem. Look how good that's going now. So there's that. Again, M12 with a 1.25 pitch. All of these studs, all of these ones for the brake housing and axle, they're all M12 1.25. Now, I have some other bolts that I have to swap over. So these are an M10 1.25, and these are an M8 1.25. And over here, it's upside down, but it doesn't matter. Here's the M8 1.25, M10 1.25, okay, versus the 12. This is where the propeller shaft, the propeller shaft comes in at the rear to go up towards the front for the four-wheel drive. So there's a gear in here and a fork that'll get your four-wheel drive engaged. Pretty simple device. Anyway, these are 12s. And what else? I already said these are 12s. The hubs that carry like the differential and the axle bearing and all that, these are 10s. Okay, so I've got an M8 1.25 tap, and I've got the 10 back here. I'll show you something in a second. And I got the 12. And so I've just been cutting and cleaning all my threads. You see how easy that's going in because I've already done it. They're super clean. All of these holes were kind of crunchier and tighter, and I was really grinding away and cutting stuff. And I could feel, and sometimes I was worried that I was messing up the threads, but it would always, like, even when it was getting a little more snug, I could always jerk and feel that it would still go a little. And man, when it, oh, right there, see, when it bottoms out, you know it. So I wouldn't be so worried that, you know, you're messing up your threads or something. It is going to really come to a hard stop when it bottoms out. Most holes will bottom out. Some of them, only a few, go clean through. And then, of course, if you haven't ever done this either, you know, as you're cutting through the threads, grime is going to build up into this little like fluted channel here. So after every 2, at least, I was having to clean that out. Just depends on how grimy your equipment is. So that's going on. There are a couple other holes here. Where am I looking? Let's look at this one that's upright. So like this hole here, I can't even remember what thread's in there, but I believe it's an M14, probably a 1.25. And underneath, there are some holes that on this, apparently nobody ever had a, oh shoot, gosh darn it, I forget what it's called. Anyway, like a hitch, shoot, I forget, where it's got like the floating bar that comes through here that kind of moves back and forth, that style of hitch. Anyway, it bolts on from the underneath here. And apparently nobody ever had that attached because there were these rubber plugs in here and they're like dry rotted and very hard. So a couple of them pried out, no problem. But they don't really seal off very well, and you can see how I'm getting a lot of corrosion in those threads. Now back here, these, look, they just broke off. I couldn't get them out, but I took my M10 tap and I was able to thread it down in there and just wiggle it by hand and pull that sucker out. So if you're already cleaning your threads, then you'll already have this M10 1.25 pitch tap, and you can use it to get these plugs out. I don't know that I'll be bolting that hitch on underneath here, but I do know, look at how bad that is. I mean, so much moisture's been getting in there. I'm sure this one's the same back here. I want to clean that out before it's too late. Either way, I want to clean just in case I do put that hitch back on. Okay, so cleaning all my threads, I'm doing that. I would suggest you do the same. It was kind of tedious, but then as I was going, it became sort of like therapeutic. Getting lost in thought. My other thing here, oh yeah, look at that junk that's in the, look at that crud that's in there. So I'm not going to have to fight that crud when I go and put everything back together. When it comes to the gasket surface, this came with fairly prepared surfaces already, but there were still some patches of gasket, especially on the bottom here. Again, this is flipped over. So, and this is the whole area where there more than likely would ever be a leak if it was going to leak, especially right here, you know, between these little spaces right here, and there's going to be fluid flowing through here. So my process was on any little patches, since this is cast iron and very hard, I did use a razor blade and no pushing and gouging. I got it on there and I would just really slit the gasket away. Just cut it real smooth away, and then you'll almost always find you're gonna still see that there was a gasket patch there. It's just that you got most of the material away. Then I went to a brass brush wheeled scrubber thing here on my drill, just an electric drill on the high speed, and I was able to get the gasket material away. So I hit this really good all over to get the gasket material scrubbed away. But then But then you want to make sure you have a nice smooth surface, even though the gasket's gone. Like how smooth is this, and how much is it like clean metal? So you could use vinegar. Anyway, vinegar is something like that when you're doing this. So that'll keep the gasket material soft. So vinegar, people will talk about all kinds of weird things to like, oh, what do you spray on there to make the gasket come? It's gasket material is way softer than, you know, brass wires. So you just don't really have to worry about it. But any fluid helps flush particles away and does help soften the little bit of gasket material that's still on there. So again, vinegar or soapy water, the brass. After that, I used one of these. So Scotch-Brite. This is a more coarse disc here with these little fingers, so they're kind of flexible. You don't have to push very hard, and they're like plastic, but there's some grit in the plastic itself. So I did a green on here, then followed by yellow, which is a little bit more fine, and then I went to the white. And when I was using these, I was using some WD-40, because at that point I just wanted to make sure the surface wasn't gonna rust and that I was flushing things away and I could see the metal, you know, what it was looking like. But with these anyway, you don't have to have hard pressure. In fact, you're not supposed to push hard. You don't want to ruin this. They're kind of expensive. They're like $14 a piece. But you're just gonna spin and keep motion, you know, keep some motion and movement, and then find a pattern for yourself. Like I did like up and down, I did side to side, I was doing some little swirls around all these, I was doing like some figure eight stuff, just so everything was nice and even as I was going and I wasn't wearing into one spot more than any other, especially with the more coarse disc. Yeah. And because of all this pitting, I'll need to use some sort of sealant on my gaskets to fill those pits. And I'm almost done. I'll wash and clean the inside of this thing, and then I will pull these studs, pull the gears, move the gears over, put the studs in, and then I should be good to go. Anyway, this can move now, and this can move. See it turn in there, and I can pull it out. And now, because all the gears are kind of meshed together, slip down in there, kind of hard to see. Okay, yeah, you know, got a bigger, taller gear, you know, down in there, meshing up with this one right here. And anyway, they're meshed up or overlapping each other. And I can't just pull, you know, I can't just pull this out. Or if I pull this out, this one will come out. This one will slide out enough to where this entire end, the bearing, comes out, and this will cock down. But you can't keep going any further. And so, you know, this is something that's obvious for a lot of people, but not for me, because this is my first time working on this. My understanding is that, yeah, these can slide out, but you have to knock these gears off of that shaft. And so you see there's teeth here. And so, you know, I think it's just kind of stuck. Actually, I'm feeling a little bit of motion there. So I guess it's like there was a clip back here. Let's see, there's a groove right there. And so with that clip gone, this bearing should be able to come off, but it's quite tight. And if the bearing would come off, and with this gear being a little bit loose, you can see it wiggling there, and like a thrust washer kind of thing, it should slide off. And if this would slide off, then yeah, this whole thing would come right out. And so I don't have a tripod hooked up right now, but what I'm basically going to be doing is trying to kind of pry and pop this bearing off of here and get this gear slid off. I was watching some videos online. You know, there's like a ton of guys in India working on tractors and whatnot. You always see them banging on the shaft with a mallet and whatnot. You know, I think that's fine if you got kind of a hard plastic mallet or something. You wouldn't want to hit it with steel, that's for sure, and bash this up. But they're careful enough, I guess. But they know what they're doing to a degree. Anyway, so I think that's what I need to do. Just get some of these gears knocked off of here so that these shafts can come out. So that's what I'm going to try right now. Okay, what I found, I was trying to think, you know, what's the least invasive way to get this off without banging on the end here, and without getting this gear against, or the bearing against the teeth of a gear down below, and then tapping it, because you're putting all that, you're tapping and you're putting all that pressure on the teeth, and I don't want to chip a tooth or something. So I was looking at this thrust washer down in here, and kind of hard. Okay, so here's what I'm doing. There's a gap right there. You can kind of see in between the washer and the bearing down in there. So I got a chunky chisel, and getting in there and just tapping lightly, and I can see the bearing starting to pop off. Now, I'm putting the flat side of the chisel against the bearing. I'm not hitting the bearing. I'm also not really totally hitting that thrust washer. I'm wedging in between the two. So it's not causing much damage, or it's not causing any that I can see yet. And I'm just gonna have to be careful and then look at that thrust washer and see if there was any scarring on the metal or anything like that, or a burr that I need to kind of file off or something. So I don't think this is perfect, but it is working. Okay, see how far this is out? I've got it. And I was able to, I had this chisel very, very wide, and it's not very sharp, right? So it's kind of blunt. So after I used my first skinny chisel to make a little progress, then I was able to use the big one to make some more progress, and making sure not to, wedge through and then hit the shaft. But then still I was stuck. That's as far as I got. So I ended up having to put a block of wood down in here in between this gear and the case. Block of wood, so that this gear, everything was kind of being held against this gear. So block of wood, I actually had a block of wood and like a pair of pliers to take up the rest of the gap. So anyway, I had something wedged in between here in the case. And then I was able to get this punch here and punch the shaft the rest of the way out. But again, just making sure that, this gear pushing against this, and this gear against the block of wood. So all the force was just going into the case. I didn't have this gear here or the bearing. None of these components were touching the other gears down there, so I wasn't banging against those other gears, just against the case. And it was hard. I mean, it was really hard. I a lot of pounding. I wasn't hitting hard. In fact, I just used a regular size hammer, and just doing some quick smacks, but not like bashing on it. There we go. I got it. And this is as much for me as memory of how I did it as it is for anybody else watching this video. Okay, for this fork, which was obviously right down in there, and then right through this hole, you've got this shaft, and the slotted end is right here. The slot just helps you rotate the shaft, because I suppose this was on my videos earlier, but there's a screw or bolt or something that you rotate until the hole lines up with here, and you put that bolt in, and that'll keep the shaft from coming in and out. There's no seal or anything on the end of the shaft because this is all internal. The other end of the shaft is back here. But there is, so in here, and then sitting down in that hole down in there. Let's see if we can kind of see. Yeah, there you go. There's a hole down inside there with a spring, and this ball sits down in there, and then the shaft goes in. So you'd have to, to put the shaft back in, you got to get the ball in there, press it down with something skinny that you can fit in here, press it down, and then slip the shaft through. You can tap the shaft out from the other end. You wouldn't want to mess up the slotted edge, but you can get, I had a punch back here, and I tapped the shaft out, and I could feel a little bit of a springy bounciness, and that's because of that ball that's in there. So, and also, this, of course, as you're tapping, the whole thing wants to slide forward, move in here, and so I put blocks of wood again. So I put blocks of wood in between the case and the fork, and then I was able to tap from the other end and just keep going until finally it popped free. The ball went flying down inside. Well, not flying, dropped down inside. And so I made sure I got that. the shaft. And that's it for that piece. Now I'm on to the next set of gears and the shafts. Okay, just a reminder, so this shaft goes to the pinion gear, and it had this nut and washer spacer on there. So just stuck it back on there for a reminder. And this nut was one where, you know, you've got this little area where you can crush it down and fit it into that notch right there. Keeps it from coming out. So this nut tight on here would have been pulling this shaft this way. And so with this off, I mean, then you can basically sort of assume that, oh, okay, well, now the shaft can go that direction. And I can tell, what can I tell? I can slide this out, but then what happens? Basically nothing, because like, you know, all the gears on here and the pinion, you know, they're not sliding off, so you can't just like take it all that way. This is obviously, they're not going to fit through the hole. They're not going to come off this direction. So I'm going to tap the shaft out that way. And I'm going to be real careful not to damage any of the end of this. This is all beveled off, so it'd be pretty hard to actually cause a problem on the edge here because the threads stick out past the actual beveled edge of this. But whatever, you know, I'll use something more skinnier than the shaft to put on here and then tap that with the hammer. I'm not going to actually hit the shaft with the hammer. I don't know if I can do some sort of a punch type thing. This is that's too skinny. It's just going to go in this hole here and get messed up. But anyway, I'll find something and start tapping that out. I was able to tap and make some progress. You can see this is recessed back down in the bearings, but then I felt like when I hit, I felt like it just had a different feeling. And I checked. Let's see down in there. You can see there's a C-clip right on the shaft down in there, which is interesting because then you can't just pull that C-clip all the way off, but you could open it and then slide it this direction, or the direction like towards me. Hopefully you can see that down in there. Yeah, right. So right there. So I've got the C-clip. These gears, of course, will slide over. And so I'm going to undo that C-clip and move it this direction, and then hopefully this gear will move this direction, and then I can keep tapping the shaft and keep moving it all that way. And I'm guessing I won't have to bring that very far. Well, I may have to keep sliding the C-clip as I go. Yeah, so that everything can keep moving this direction as the shaft moves that direction. Okay, I've got it. Okay, I have it so far. There's two bearings inside there. So there's another one still in there. But I got it that far. And there's two bearings down in there too, like two bearings behind the pinion gear. So now, you know, with having gone that far, you know, this is getting really recessed in there. And I'm trying to think here. This shaft, even with this sleeve like pulled out of here, the shaft kind of still hangs in there nice and tight because everything's so snug up in the front there. So you can slide this out. What I think I'm going to do then is okay, so I had it like this basically with wood in here tapping on this, and the whole thing was going forward. I've got it pulled back out right now. Anyway, but now that I've got it so far, I think, and a lot of the force is being put on the back of this. There's a lip. The bearings can't go through this piece. So if you block this piece and tap, it's pulling the bearings off. But now that I got it this far, I'll have to put wood back here. Instead of wood right here, I'll have to put wood back here and keep this direction so it's against the bearing. So a couple pieces of wood, keep doing my tapping. I hate banging on stuff like this. It's just really not, it doesn't seem right, but It's what I have to do. And it's working. So I did get the bigger mallet out, and I'm finding that bigger hits, just bigger, harder smacks is getting the job done. And I've got it. Pieces off. Sorry, I'm not recording while I'm hitting, but yeah, with that sleeve pulled back and the block of wood behind here, and this one came out easier. This one was easier. This one was quite tight. And that shaft that was up here on the top, that I was trying to, the one that was up here, and I had the bearing right in here. That bearing, where is it? It's right here. It almost seems misshapen. It was so tight on the shaft. I mean, I was really having to, wedge in there really hard, and then bang the shaft, really, really hard to get it out. And then when I try to fit it back on, it's like a press fit. I might order a new bearing and see if the new bearing fits on a little bit more perfect. Anyway, but yeah, first bearing here was a little bit tight, off. Second one's off. Here's the whole sleeve. So got that, yeah. And you can see here's that lip right there at my fingernail. So that's what keeps the bearings from going that direction. And I was worried at all the banging. I thought, oh, I'm going to break this piece, but they held up just fine. So all good. I can move on. I'm getting really close to being able to just clean this up and start putting everything in there. Can't wait. I do still have the dilemma of this C-clip right there. So in order to move the shaft any further that direction to slip these gears off, that clip has got to come loose. The nice thing is, though, now I have a lot of room to work with. I was having trouble, getting my clip pliers down in there, especially this style, getting it down in there, opening it, and then being able to slide it this direction. So now I have more room to work, and I'll have to fiddle with it, but I'll get it eventually. Got it. And a little bit of advice. Once I got the clip in there, I didn't start pulling. Once I opened it a little, I didn't start pulling this way until I really opened it super far. In fact, I was thinking to myself, I'd be better off opening this clip so far and ruining it and being able to get it off and just put a new one on than I would, spending an hour trying to, and having the pliers slip out of there again and again. That's what started to happen at first. So I just opened it up really wide, and boom, it popped over. So now I'll take a piece of wood or screwdriver or something and slide the clip this direction so I can get this gear this way. So, yeah. Or, oh, look at that. Yeah, I could just do that. Yeah, I guess that works as much as anything because that puts even pressure around the entire ring while moving it. And here we are. So you can see I've got it slid over so far. I can start sliding these gears off. That's all forward. There's the two bearings I was telling you about for the pinion gear up there. And yeah, that clip that's down in there is just sliding over real easy. No problem. So I just got a little bit further to push over, and then I'll slide all these gears off, be able to then take the pinion out, the rest of the way, just pull it forward. Now I've got this bottom shaft to deal with next, which I'm expecting will be easy. Famous last words, right? And I just wanted to mention or show, here's what that one's got. And I believe that pitted shaft part's just a sleeve. I'm got a bearing on that end. And this entire time that I was working on the upper gears, even the highest ones, this was actually out and angled down. It was like out and down out of the way. So those teeth were never interfering with anything else I was doing with the gears up above. Okay, so I didn't realize there's a C-clip down in there on that one too. So I'll pop that C-clip, and hopefully this bearing then will slide right off that direction. If it doesn't, I don't know. I might be able to, I probably can't use my chisel method because you don't want to bang a chisel in between the gears and the outer sleeve of the bearing. It'll just mess with the whole bearing that way. So hopefully it comes off easy. Or I might be able to get that C-clip off, put this back in, put wedge wood in between the gears and the case, and then smack it from that end there and come out this way. Yeah, that should work out just fine. Okay, I've got it out. Actually, the bearing is still down in place. Kind of see it back in there. And yeah, I'll just tap that out lightly, easily. Should come up real easy. It had been coming in and out, but you know, my last blow with the mallet popping this out, the bearing kind of probably got, you know, a little bit cocked just slightly. So it remains down in there, but I've got this out. So you've got that bearing, which is on here. Remember, there was a clip on here. There had previously been a clip on the other side too. And so then we've got this sleeve here, and I just wanted to go over a couple of the parts. So let's see if I can do this without dropping everything and do it one-handed. You got this washer. Now this washer, notice, see right here, there's a groove, and there's one on the other side, I believe. Where is it? There it is. So there's a groove. So the groove goes against the gears. I'm assuming that just lets oil flow down in between this washer and the gear. And so the groove goes against the gear. And then there is some roller bearings in here. Let's see, I don't want to drop everything. Let's do this. Okay, these gears, and I don't know, are they pressed together? They're not. Maybe they are cut like a solid piece. Anyway, and so it was smaller gear to this direction, larger gear to this direction. Or, you know, large gear to the front of the tractor, smaller gear to the rear of the tractor. So we've got that. And they were sitting on these roller bearings. Okay. There's two of them in there. And what else? Well, we've got this like sleeve on the shaft, which I'm going to leave it alone. It's clearly not part of the shaft itself. This washer is part of that. So I'll have to look at the diagram, but it's feeling like this sleeve and this washer, that this is... No, that's separate. This might not be a sleeve. You know, in fact, I think this is just the shaft, even though it's a little bit pitted looking. And we've got like a kind of like a bushing, or I don't know if you would consider that like a bearing race or something like that. Anyway, okay. So I'm leaving all that alone, and it'll get put back together just the way I found it. I will clean it though, because I'm kind of touching things and getting some little grime here and there. And maybe if I make an instructional video, I might get the diagram and show everybody what's actually going on with this. Okay, now I can get that one out of the way. And what do I got? That's it. My block of wood I was using to tap that out. And I'm done getting everything out of here. I've decided to take the studs out. That way I'll have the studs on hand ready to go, and I can just get this thing tossed in the trash, I guess. So real quick, taking a closer look at the pattern of the long bolts, long studs, and where they're at. I believe, you know, when the axle and everything goes on, there's bolts that go into here. These weren't studs. Short stud here. got the short stud up here, which I still have to clean the threads on. It's just waiting. And same thing on the opposite side. Short stud, longs, but the three at the back there's nothing there because they take bolts later. And I've just got some nuts jammed together real tight, and it's coming out. So I'm not expecting any trouble. All these look really clean, and you can see, you know, on the inside, they're all clean, no corrosion or anything like that. So gonna have at it and then get this thing out of my way. Down to my last stud on this side. It's this top one. So I did get the threads cut the rest of the way. This one was pretty rusty. Threads got cut, and then there was a lot of rust around right here. So any of them that are like that, I've just been using like a brass wheel brush and, you know, going around cleaning everything off. I did that on those other studs over here. There was only one I saw that got, after I did it and after a while, it sat there and kind of got rusty again. But you can't, I feel it a little bit. I mean, it's just not bad. It's not like thick rust. So the cleaning did work, but I might hit it again. We'll see. Not really too important. It works just fine. So that's it. I got to pull this one, and then I can flip this around and get all the studs on the other side. All the studs are out, and the last thing I want to do real quick before I toss this thing outside is just looking at oil seals. So I've got a seal right here. This is my left side. Seal here. I've got a plug right here, which I think is already on the other, the new case, the new used case. That's the only thing I'm seeing on this side. I believe there's certain spots where, you know, like a shaft goes in and there's just an O-ring. And let me see if I can flip this around. Okay. Again, a seal. Got the plug. That's it. Okay. Wow. Okay. This is a milestone. Tomorrow, after cleaning up the surfaces a little bit, maybe cutting some threads. I think I did these on this side already, but anyway, I'll double check and make sure. I may have already done it, but yeah, cleaning everything up, and then I'll start putting it back together.